You wake before the bell, when rooftops are still the color of cooled embers and the linen smells faintly of starch and sleep. You listen to the house thinking to itself. A board settles, a latch breathes, somewhere a pot lid is lifted and set down again. Warm bread rises through the stairwell, and, behind it, something gentler, like sunlight that learned to be sweet. You lie quietly and let the city arrive in layers, patient as steam. You sit up and let your feet find the brick, one patch cool, the next with a pocket of hoarded warmth. Your shirt scratches one shoulder, slides soft over the other. You wet your fingers at the ewer, smooth your hair, and test your cheeks with the back of your hand, noting the small rasp that says faces are fields and must be tended. You open the shutter a finger's width. The street answers with broom on stone, mule tack, and a voice warming itself to conversation. You step into a morning the color of washed wool. A woman sweeps her threshold. Dust drifts to a corner that has adopted dust as a hobby. An old dog finds yesterday's slice of sun in exactly the same place. A boy hurries by with a tray of cups and an expression that says all of them are precious and none of them should spill. You fall into its pace the way a hand finds its glove. You walk toward the well and the barber's bench because that is where the morning arranges itself. A brazier blinks one red eye. A glazed jar rests in a pan above it, and a spoon sleeps across the lid. The smell meets you before the sight does. Flowers convinced to behave, smoke that was careful not to shout, the generous roundness of honey learning to loosen. Men arrive by ones and twos, sit on the stone rim, and greet the water as if it were an old account being balanced. The barber lifts his apron from a peg, shakes it once, and ties it without hurry. He rinses a beard at the well, pats it with a square of linen folded into quarters, and combs downward until the hairs agree to face in one direction. Then the spoon enters the jar and returns with a ribbon that takes its time remembering the spoon. He drapes the ribbon across the comb's teeth and begins. First pass, from the ear downward, encouraging order. Second pass, along the chin, noting the landscape. Third pass, from underneath, retrieving the few who prefer private arrangements. Honey persuades. It does not argue. A drop forms and thinks about traveling. A boy is already there with linen, folded and ready, because he has learned that gravity is punctual. The drop bows and disappears as if it had always meant to be polite. From a small stoppered bottle, a breath of rose water joins the air. From another, a curl of orange peel oil follows. The barber does not measure with scales. He measures with days. Habit is his ledger, and habit is correct. Someone remarks that bees will be especially courteous. Someone else nods with the tidy satisfaction of a person who likes the world to agree with him. The square accepts both statements without choosing. Women cross the far edge of the stones, baskets tight in the crooks of their arms. One lifts her head the smallest degree, the gesture of a nose considering a rumour. Her companion's mouth tries not to smile and nearly succeeds. They continue on. Sweetness does what words are too busy to do. No one says seduction. No one needs to. The city has long practice in letting sense do the introductions while mouths catch up at their leisure. You watch three more beards submit to the same gentle discipline. Shine gathers the way water gathers in a shallow bowl, more with each pass, never in a hurry. Men rise a fraction taller than they sat. Greetings are delivered at a distance designed for fragrance to travel the last step on its own. It is a quiet economy. The well rope sighs, and the bucket returns a thin laugh of light. A bee wanders in, late for its own arrangements, and considers a chin that has become a very small meadow. It chooses the rosemary pot on a windowsill instead, where a hand turns the clay a breath to the left, as if offering a better seat. The bee accepts. A cat folds itself on a step and pretends to be a shadow that forgot to move. The mule with apples returns lighter and more philosophical. The barber warms the spoon again. He wipes the rim of the jar with a cloth that knows the motion better than memory. He sets his combs in a line as straight as a moral. He does not announce the work. He simply makes a river in each beard and lets it find its own banks. You notice how the scent settles into the mortar lines of the square. a sweetness that will outlast the footfalls and remain when the stories of the morning forget their adjectives. When the men disperse, they do so in pairs and singly, like commas leaving a sentence to find other sentences. Collars are clean, mouths are careful, and chins carry a small, confident light. They do not need to. The city, which admires reflection while pretending not to, holds their images a moment in every polished surface, and then sends them on. You remain a little while after the last chair is pushed back. On the stone you find tiny beads where drops have dried into pale buttons. Ants will find them later and take notes. Bells begin to test their iron voices. The river, somewhere beyond the roofs, turns and minds its business with the indifference of something that knows it will be here after everyone has finished grooming. You rise and let the day fit over your shoulders like a cloak that has been tailored many times and still remembers you. The air tastes of bread, coal, rose, and the round calm of honey. If you keep a little of it with you, no one will object. You step back into the slow, steady sentence of the street, and the city proceeds, glossy in a way that pretends not to be glossy at all. You approve, and you move on. You wake once more into the Florence morning, and the bells are still tugging the city into shape. Their sound does not command. It leans against the walls and seeps through shutter slats, nudging ears that already know what hour it must be. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the still pools of silence left in the corners of the room. The floor is uneven, one board sighs beneath your step. You pour a trickle of water from the jug into your hand, cool against the warmth of your skin, and drag it across your face. The day is not demanding. It only asks you to keep pace with its long, unhurried rhythm. The courtyard well is already busy, though the square is still shaded in blue-grey. Men gather with their collars loose, hair falling in sleep's careless arrangements. A wooden bench set against the wall has been claimed by those too weary to stand, and their posture is one of deliberate stillness, as though conserving movement until absolutely necessary. At the edge, leaning against a stone pillar, a cluster of young men exchange comments about the quality of the water, about the clarity of the sky, about nothing at all. Conversation, like combing, is a ritual, not intended to solve, only to fill the air in soft increments. Buckets rise, iron handles knocking against stone rims. Water splashes into troughs. The sound is clean, sharper than the muffled talk, sharper than the footsteps on cobble. A man dips his beard into his palm, scoops water upward, and lets droplets chase one another down his jaw. He rubs carefully, not with the briskness of cleaning, but with the patience of someone preparing a surface. Linen cloths unfold, pressed yesterday by wives, mothers, or sisters. They are soft with use, faded along edges, but still willing to serve as assistants in the quiet theatre of grooming. You notice how each man performs the routine differently yet with the same outcome. One combs first, the wooden teeth dragging through tangled threads, then rinses with water as though softening a canvas for later colour. Another splashes first, squeezing water down the length of his beard until it darkens, then combs while it drips. Both gestures converge, a smoothing, a readiness. The bench creaks under shifting weight, and sunlight nudges into the square inch by inch. From a small pouch, a man shakes out a fine dust of ground herbs. He pinches the mixture between fingers and sprinkles it into the damp beard before combing again. The scent drifts faintly. Lavender, rosemary, perhaps thyme. It is not meant to announce itself loudly. It is only to offer a subtle prelude before honey arrives, to suggest to noses that sweetness has friends. The men do not debate ingredients. They trust habit, and habit is less trouble than argument. A boy, tasked with carrying fresh water, bends his knees too quickly and spills a quarter of the bucket. It slides along the cobbles, tracing lines that dry before they complete their journey. No one scolds him. A nearby man, busy trimming the edges of his beard with shears that click softly, lifts his chin at the boy, a gesture that says, "Try again, but without harshness." The boy nods and repeats the task, slower, wiser. The air grows fuller with sound, sandals slapping, shutters opening, chickens being persuaded to scatter from doorways. Above all, There is the scrape of combs across hair, the pause of hands smoothing, the rhythm of men leaning over the well one after another. Their reflections ripple, disordered for an instant, then return. Faces appear cleaner, less shadowed, prepared to be dressed in honey soon. Someone begins humming, not loudly, but enough that the melody attaches itself to the morning like another layer of scent. The tune is simple, a few rising notes, then a patient descent. A man across the square matches it under his breath. The sound is not music meant for performance, it is music meant for passing time, like counting out strokes of a comb. You notice how the beards themselves take on a new weight after rinsing. Water clings to tips, gathers into tiny beads before surrendering to gravity. The cloths absorb what they can, but some droplets insist on marking the stone below. The pavement darkens with these round signatures, temporary but confident. Bees will notice later. For now, the stones simply shine a little longer before they fade back to their usual matte selves. The barber's chair, polished smooth by many mornings, stands waiting for its next client. A man settles into it with the familiarity of someone sliding into an old argument they enjoy repeating. The barber's hands work without fuss. Comb through, trim a stray hair, wipe with cloth, comb again. The man tilts his head, inspecting not in a mirror but in trust of the process. Beards are personal, but their care is communal. Each gesture is borrowed from a dozen other mornings and will be loaned again tomorrow. By now, the scent of wet stone has joined the faint perfume of herbs, and together they form the morning's cloak. You breathe it in, slow, steady, and let it coat the inside of your chest. You watch another man cup his hands under the trickle from the bucket, splashing his face, then leaning back with eyes closed, satisfied not at the result, but at the motion itself. His beard glitters, darker at the root, lighter where the first rays of sun find moisture. He does not rush. The honey is waiting, but the preparation deserves its own long hour. The square widens as you stand there, not in space, but in feeling. The walls step back, the air thickens. The barber folds his cloth again, ready for the next man. The well rope creaks once more, and you notice your own hands resting loosely, idle but calm. You are part of the pause, part of the preparation, part of the city smoothing its face before presenting itself to the day. And so you linger, as Florence lingers, in this ritual of water, comb and cloth, knowing the sweetness will come later. But for now, the patience is enough. You wake again to the smell of warm stone and the echo of voices carried low across the courtyard. The morning is further along now. The sun has crept down from roof lines and has begun to stretch across the square. You hear the clink of a spoon against a clay pot and the faint scrape of a lid being set aside. The sound is not sharp but round, as though softened by the sweetness inside. It is the ritual of honey being coaxed to readiness. A small brazier sits beside the barber's bench, its coals humming quietly. A pot rests above, earthen and glazed, with lines baked into it like shallow rivers. Within it honey slouches and thickens, reluctant to move unless persuaded by heat. The servant stirs with a wooden spoon, turning slowly, lifting, letting the ribbon fall back with a lazy fold. Each motion is drawn out, patient, designed to give the substance a mind of its own. The warmth does not boil, it persuades. You notice how honey changes when it warms. The scent leans closer, less shy, spreading to corners that had previously belonged to stone and dust. It smells of orchards in springtime, of hives hidden in olive groves, of sunlight that refuses to vanish even when shadows insist. The air thickens slightly, and men waiting their turn shift with the instinct of animals aware of sweetness near at hand. The barber approaches and tests the honey with his finger, dipping and then letting a strand stretch. It lengthens obediently, then snaps with a soft sigh. He nods as though the honey has delivered a speech he agrees with. He wipes his finger on a cloth already shiny with other mornings. The servant lowers the pot closer to the coals, careful not to scorch. Too hot and the honey will misbehave, grow bitter. Too cool and it will sulk, refusing to spread. The line between the two is thin, and the barber guards it like an oath. One man leans closer, beard already washed and combed, eyes following the spoon's path as though watching a ritual older than words. He strokes his chin absent-mindedly, fingers pressing the short bristles that will soon drink the golden mixture. His lips twitch into something near a smile. He knows the moment is coming when warmth will meet hair, when scent will cling not only to the air but to him, and when glances might linger a fraction longer. You see how the process slows everyone. Even those not seated fall into the rhythm of the spoon. Lift, drip, turn. Lift, drip, turn. The sound of liquid folding onto itself is quiet but insistent, the heartbeat of the square for this hour. Bees, though not yet present, seem imagined in the space, as if the honey calls to them in advance. The barber gestures to a man waiting. He rises, adjusts his collar, and sits with a gravity that suggests more than grooming. It is participation in a rite. His beard, dark and curling, has been combed into obedience. The barber takes the spoon, lifts a portion, and lets it hover briefly, cooling a breath, then sets the comb beneath the stream. Honey coats the teeth, slipping across them with a shine that transforms wood into gold. The first stroke begins at the ear and travels downward. The honey lays itself into the hair with the softness of a hand smoothing linen. It binds without choking, it shines without glaring. Another stroke follows, and another, each more certain. The man closes his eyes and breathes through his nose, the scent of warm honey mingling with faint herbs left from washing. Around them, men lean forward slightly, watching as though the outcome might surprise them, though it never does. A small boy with a cloth stands ready, as always, to intercept the inevitable droplet. The honey gathers at the tip of the comb, swells, and drops with slow precision. The boy's cloth catches it mid-descent, folding around it, absorbing it into a memory of sweetness. He wipes the comb's teeth with the same careful touch, then stands aside. His task is not dramatic, but without him, the ritual would stumble. The barber continues, humming under his breath. The tune is the same simple rise and fall heard earlier in the morning. Perhaps it is the only song a comb knows. Honey spreads evenly now, darkening the beard until it glows in patches where sunlight strikes. The man breathes again, lips parting just slightly, as though the sweetness has worked its way into more than hair. When the process is finished, the barber steps back, satisfied. The man opens his eyes, touches his beard once, and smiles with the small triumph of someone who has joined the morning's order. He rises, nods, and moves aside, his chin gleaming like polished wood. The scent lingers after him, filling the space where he sat. The pot remains on the brazier, continuing its quiet labor. The spoon turns, the honey folds, and another man prepares to take his place. The routine is endless, repeating without impatience. Each beard receives its portion. Each man becomes another bearer of sweetness into the city. The air grows thicker with fragrance, but it never overwhelms. It drapes itself gently, a veil over Florence's cobbles and arches. You watch all of this without hurry, noting how ordinary it feels, how easily sweetness becomes part of stone, cloth, and skin. The city does not rush, nor do you. Warm honey slides across combs, and the day continues, a golden thread stitching itself into every beard it touches. You wake again in Florence, and the light is sharper now, glancing off tiled roofs, nudging pigeons into flight. The square feels fuller than before. The barber's bench has claimed its role as stage, the well its role as chorus, and the men their roles as actors who repeat the same lines every morning, yet never grow tired of the script. You walk toward the hum of it, a low blend of comb teeth against hair, water lapping against stone, and laughter that never strains itself into loudness. The barber sits upright on his stool, apron smoothed over his knees. His tools are laid in a neat row, combs of bone and wood, scissors with thin blades that catch the sun in quick flashes, a razor for edges, and the inevitable honey jar glistening on the bench's corner. It is a simple collection, yet treated with reverence. A man can build his day from these objects, and indeed many do. Clients wait nearby, standing or perching on the low wall of the well. They do not fidget. Their patience is as much a part of grooming as the honey itself. One man tilts his head back, stroking his beard as though imagining how the barber's comb will soon travel across it. Another cups his chin, lost in the inspection of nothing in particular. They know their turn will come, and that time in Florence is trained to walk rather than run. The barber chooses his first client, a man with streaks of silver beginning to spread in his beard. He pats the chair, and the man settles into it with a sigh that blends weariness with anticipation. The barber begins not with honey, not even with oil, but with trimming. The scissors whisper along the edges, clipping stray strands that jut rebelliously into space. The sound is delicate, smaller than birdsong, yet persistent enough to mark progress. The barber combs downward, gathering the hair, then lifts it slightly and lets it fall back into order. He repeats this with the certainty of someone who has done so thousands of times. A young apprentice stands nearby, watching with careful eyes, holding a fresh cloth draped over his arm. His task is not yet to cut, but to learn, to watch the rhythm until it seeps into his bones. You notice the way the barber leans close, not in intimacy, but in necessity. His breath smells faintly of fennel seeds chewed earlier, a small trick to sweeten the air between him and his client. He trims carefully along the jaw, lifting the man's chin with 2 fingers, steady as stone. The man remains still, eyes closed, trusting the barber's hand to protect both beard and dignity. After the trimming comes the combing, long strokes that line the beard like ploughed fields. Each pass leaves the hair more obedient, more willing to receive what is coming. The barber dips his comb into a shallow dish of rose water, lifts it, and runs it once more through the beard. Drops glisten briefly, then disappear into the dark strands. The scent rises, subtle, never loud enough to demand notice, but firm enough to leave an impression. Now the honey appears again, warmed and ready, though this time the barber moves with the precision of an artist laying underpaint. He coats the comb's teeth lightly, no more than needed, then draws them through the beard. Honey threads along the hair, catching light in small sparks, settling with a slow, quiet weight. He repeats, stroke after stroke, until the beard gleams as though varnished. The silver streaks darken, become bronze under the glaze. Men watching nearby murmur in approval. One remarks that the honey softens the age, makes even grey look vigorous. Another nods sagely, agreeing because agreement requires less effort than invention. The barber says nothing, continuing his careful work. He wipes a stray drip with the apprentice's cloth, folds it, and continues. Nothing breaks the rhythm. Cut, comb, dip, smooth. The client opens his eyes, inspects the result in a small brass mirror, polished enough to reflect but not to flatter. He smiles faintly, satisfied not only with the appearance but with the ritual itself. To sit in the chair, to feel the comb, to smell the honey and rose water, these are privileges that shape a day more than food or coin. He stands, offers a nod, and steps aside, his beard shining like dusk sunlight. Another man takes his place, younger, eager, adjusting his tunic nervously. The barber repeats the same motions: scissors, comb, rinse, honey. The pattern is steady, predictable, almost ceremonial. Watching it is like listening to waves. Each one resembles the last, yet each one carries its own detail, its own moment. The city could forget the hour, but never this. You linger, feeling the rhythm seep into your own breath. The bench creaks, the comb glides, the honey drips and is caught, and the day continues to assemble itself around these motions. There is no urgency, no climax, only the patient layering of gestures, scents, and textures, each one another brick in Florence's honeyed wall of custom. You wake into a later stretch of morning, and the air has grown thicker, carrying both warmth and sweetness. The sun has now climbed far enough to rest its hand across the square, painting the cobbles with broad strokes of light. You find yourself drawn again toward the barber's bench, where the honey jars stand as though on parade. They glimmer in their clay vessels, their surfaces sticky from fingers that cannot help but leave their prints behind. A man approaches, beard washed and combed, and leans down toward the barber. The spoon dips once more into the pot. Honey rises reluctantly, clinging to the spoon in a slow ribbon that drags itself through the air before folding down. The barber lays it gently across the comb, then presses the comb into the beard. A thin sheen spreads, clinging, softening every strand it meets. It is not a quick process. The barber moves slowly, coaxing the honey along the hairs as though convincing them to join in a polite gathering. The man sits very still, hands folded in his lap, eyes half shut, surrendering himself to the quiet transformation. Around them, other men wait, fingers stroking their own beards, already imagining the glow, already picturing the shine they too will carry into the street. Honey drips are inevitable. They gather at the tips of the beard like small thoughts that refuse to stay hidden. A droplet swells, wavers, and finally lets go, slipping downward. The boy with the cloth is ready. He catches it neatly, folds the linen, and steps aside. The barber does not even pause. His hand moves steadily, comb dragging, honey spreading. Another drop forms, and again the cloth arrives. The rhythm is as reliable as the bells. Drip, cloth, fold, drip, cloth, fold. Men standing nearby dip their own fingers into small jars purchased at market. They rub honey directly into their beards, less precise, more impatient than the barber's work. Their fingers become sticky, and soon their hands gleam almost as much as their faces. They wipe them on cloths, on aprons, even on the edges of their tunics. The square itself begins to bear the evidence. A patch of stone near the well shows dark spots where drops have landed. Ants will find them later, but for now they remain as tiny amber coins left scattered by careless hands. You watch one man lift a small piece of linen to dab carefully along his chin, catching the trails before they harden. He folds the cloth neatly, pockets it, and nods at his reflection in a brass tray. Another man runs his fingers along his beard and then, forgetting, scratches his nose with the same hand. His expression changes as he realizes his mistake, yet he does not wipe it away. Instead, he licks his finger with quiet resignation. Around him, no one laughs. The act is common, familiar, almost expected. The air thickens with scent. Honey dominates, but beneath it, there is still rosewater, still faint orange peel, still the cool breath of the well. The mixture is pleasant, never cloying, because Florence itself carries so many smells that one never overwhelms. Bread continues to bake in ovens nearby. Olive oil warms in shallow pans. Leather, stretched across frames, dries in sun and gives off its sharp, earthy tang. All of these join with honey, forming a tapestry of fragrance that belongs only to this city, this square, this hour. Men recline now on the stone benches, freshly honeyed beards gleaming in the light. Some tilt their heads back, eyes closed, enjoying the warmth. Others speak quietly, voices lowered, as if the beards themselves require calm. Their words are simple complaints about grain prices, jokes about neighbors, observations about the weather, but each phrase is wrapped in the faint sweetness rising from their chins. A woman passes, basket of figs on her arm. She glances sideways, a fleeting look, then lowers her eyes again. Her companion stifles a laugh. The men pretend not to notice, though their postures shift slightly, chins lifted, beards angled to catch the sun. The honey works as intended. It shines, it scents, it asks for notice without demanding it. You notice that your own fingers itch, as though they too long to dip into the honey. The jar glows in the light, surface sticky where spoon and comb have rested. The temptation is not to taste but to join, to carry a fragment of the ritual with you. You resist, only because the barber is watching. He lifts the spoon again, and another man prepares himself for the comb. It is endless, this sequence of dipping, spreading, dripping, and wiping. Yet it does not feel tedious. It feels steady, like the river beyond the square, always moving yet never rushing. Each beard becomes a small riverbank, coated in golden gloss, reflecting sunlight back into the city. Each cloth becomes an archive of drops, folded into pockets, carried home as faint souvenirs. You stay longer than you intended, letting the rhythm of honey, cloth, and comb quiet your mind. The world narrows to shine and scent, to the slow labor of men preparing their faces, as carefully as priests prepare altars. Nothing demands haste, everything glistens. You wake later still, and Florence has slipped fully into brightness. The roofs are hot to the touch, the stones along the square carry warmth into the soles of sandals, and the air swells with the mingling of scents. The honey has grown bolder now. Its fragrance leans into every corner, blending with rosewater and orange peel oil. The barber's bench is busy, and jars stand uncorked like quiet witnesses. Today you notice the small bottles, lined up behind the honey pots. Their shapes are uneven, blown by glassmakers whose lungs determined their curves. Inside, liquids of pale gold, of faint rose, of deeper amber. They are oils pressed from olives, petals steeped in water, rind squeezed until its essence surrendered. Each one is a companion to the honey, invited not for sweetness, but for balance. A man approaches the bench, beard already combed and shining faintly with water. The barber uncorks a bottle with a soft pop, and the air instantly shifts. Rosewater drifts upward, floral but never heavy, a thin veil over the thicker perfume of honey. He dips his fingers, rubs them together until they gleam, and presses them gently into the beard before the honey arrives. The hair relaxes beneath his touch, softening, preparing. Another bottle offers orange oil. It is sharper, brighter, a scent that insists on being noticed. The barber adds a drop, spreading it with the comb. Honey follows, spreading across the beard, but now it mingles with these other voices. Sweetness is present, yes, but so is freshness, so is brightness. Together they create not just gloss, but a perfume that clings without being announced. You watch as other men attempt their own mixtures. Some lean toward rosewater, some toward the citrus oil. Each swears by his own choice, though none argue loudly. Florence prefers quiet certainty to noisy debate. They dip their fingers, coat their beards, wipe away the drips, and sit back with faces that gleam, each slightly different in tone, but all carrying the same slow glow. The air above the square changes with every gesture. A beard dipped in honey alone releases one fragrance. Another with rose water releases something softer. Another with orange oil something sharper. When the breezes stir, they mingle, creating a drifting blend that changes with each step you take. You move across the square and find one pocket smelling of sweetness, another of citrus, another of flowers. It is like walking through overlapping conversations, none of which you need to answer. The barber hums again as he works, the same tune as before, though now you notice he leans his head with the rhythm of the comb. The honey slides more easily into softened hair, and the sheen it leaves behind is smoother, more even. The apprentice stands ready, holding cloths that are already stiff in places from dried drips. He hands them one by one, folding each used square neatly, stacking them as though building a small archive of sweetness. A man passes with a jug of wine. He pauses to watch, then chuckles softly at the sight of a beard glowing like a polished walnut. He does not mock. He only observes, nods, and moves on. Florence is accustomed to such things. Customs grow old, but never ridiculous, when repeated often enough. The barber continues without comment, drawing the comb through, letting the honey spread, letting the fragrance mingle. Nearby, a pair of young men experiment with their own jars. One drips too much rosewater into the honey and grimaces when it thins the mixture. The other shakes his head knowingly, though his own attempt drips along his tunic. They wipe their hands with exaggerated care, pretending not to mind the sticky stains. No one corrects them. Error is part of the learning, and bees will find the stains soon enough. You breathe slowly, and the air feels layered on your tongue. Sweet, sharp, soft. It is not one flavor but three, resting together without competition. The scent clings to your skin, to your clothes, to your memory. You know it will follow you even when you leave the square, a shadow made of sweetness. The barber finishes with one more man, pats his shoulder, and gestures for the next. The rhythm continues, unbroken. Dip, mix, comb, wipe, fold. The oils shift, the honey glistens, the air thickens, and the city does not hurry. It never hurries. It only layers fragrance upon fragrance, shine upon shine, until everything glows with patient indulgence. You wake again into the same square, though the morning has stretched long enough that shadows now lean short and stubborn under the sun. The honeyed men have begun to leave their seats at the barber's bench and move into the streets, carrying the fragrance with them. You linger, watching how the ritual reaches beyond the well and the brazier, into the slow theatre of Florence itself. The streets are not crowded yet, but they are filling. Sandals slap against the cobbles in a rhythm as old as stone. A mule passes, its hooves steady, carrying baskets of figs that sway like pendulums. The barber's clients blend into this scene, their beards darkened, gleaming, and perfumed. They stand taller than before, not because of pride, but because honey has a way of making even the most ordinary beard seem deliberate, composed, worthy of glances. Women pass by in pairs, always in pairs, baskets balanced against hips, cloths tucked tightly around shoulders. Their eyes flicker briefly toward the men. It is never a direct stare. That would be too obvious, too forward. Instead, it is a glance at the space just beside the beard, at the sunlight that catches a glimmer, at the air just above the chin where fragrance gathers. The glances are short, but they exist, and the men know it. You hear soft laughter ripple between two women as they walk past a cluster of honeyed beards reclining on a stone bench. The women do not pause, but their voices trail behind them, light as falling petals. The men remain still, their only response a subtle lifting of chins, enough for sunlight to claim them more fully. They are statues for a moment, carved not from marble but from gloss and fragrance. The city accepts this quietly. A man selling fruit wipes sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand and glances at the shining beards, as though they are simply another part of the scenery, like pigeons or bells. A boy carrying bread slows his pace, smirking faintly, then quickens again when his master calls. Even the mule driver turns his head once, shakes it, and mutters something under his breath, though his smile betrays more amusement than irritation. The scent trails behind the men as they move. One passes close to you, and the air fills with honey and rose water, faint but insistent. It clings to your breath for several steps before it fades. Another walks by with a sharper edge of citrus mixed into his beard, and the fragrance seems to slice the air like a blade dipped in sweetness. Each man carries his own version, his own pocket of perfume, and Florence becomes a patchwork of drifting scents. You notice that conversation itself changes near them. Women speak softer, as though unwilling to disturb the delicate fragrance. Men too lower their tones, finding words to match the sweetness hovering between them. The city does not stop, but it slows slightly, bends itself to the presence of honeyed beards without admitting it. At the edge of the square, a group of older women sit on low stools, their hands busy with mending. One looks up, squints at the gleaming chins passing by, and shakes her head with practiced disapproval. Yet her lips twitch, almost smiling, as she returns to her work. The others chuckle quietly, but none look away for long. Even disapproval must glance, even mockery must acknowledge what honey has done. You lean against a wall, the stone warm against your back, and watch the city move. Honey glimmers, laughter drifts, glances dart and retreat. It is a choreography without music, yet every step seems rehearsed, practiced across mornings too many to count. Nothing dramatic happens, and nothing needs to. The sweetness itself is enough. Florence continues on, its stones absorbing every scent, every glance, every gleam. The men carry their gloss like banners. The women notice without pausing, and you stand in the middle of it all, breathing air that is both ordinary and drenched in honey. You wake to a quieter hour, the very middle of the morning when the city has already shaken the sleep from its shoulders, but has not yet stumbled into the heavy warmth of noon. The barber's bench grows less busy now. The jars of honey stand with their rims sticky, spoons resting lazily across them. The square itself hums like a hive that has done its first work of the day, and now idles in sunlight. Across the courtyard, stone benches wait in the shade of loggias. They have gathered men the way dew gathers on leaves, slowly, almost invisibly. One by one, men with freshly treated beards make their way to these benches. They lower themselves with deliberate ease, arranging tunics, folding hands, and lifting their chins to catch stray breezes. Their faces glisten faintly, like polished walnuts left in sunlight, each beard darkened and shaped by honey. The benches line the square's edges, sturdy and worn smooth by decades of bodies leaning, waiting, talking. Today, they become a gallery of shining chins. Men recline, beards tilted toward the street, waiting as though they are statues on display. Their postures are casual, yet too carefully arranged to be entirely unconscious. One strokes his beard slowly, spreading fragrance with every pass of his fingers. Another leans his elbow on the bench's back and half smiles at no one in particular. Passers-by drift along, and the men on the benches become part of the scenery. Women glance sidelong, their eyes flicking across rows of honey-glazed faces. Some pause mid-step, pretending to adjust baskets, their glances lasting a breath longer than needed. Others hurry on, lips pressed together, though the corners of their mouths betray faint amusement. Children laugh openly, pointing, until hushed by mothers. The men do not speak much. They sit in companionable silence, their stillness louder than conversation. The honey scents drift into the square like invisible threads, carried on breezes that weave them together. One pocket of air smells heavily of rose water, another, sharper, of orange oil. The scents mingle where the breezes cross, producing combinations that are never quite the same twice. A stray dog wanders close, nose twitching. It pauses at the feet of a man whose beard drips faintly onto the ground, then sneezes and trots away. The man chuckles, lifts his chin higher, and wipes the drop with his sleeve. Bees hum faintly near flower pots at the edge of the square, but they do not bother the men. It is as if even bees know this fragrance is meant for humans today. From where you stand, the benches resemble altars, lined with offerings of shine and scent. Sunlight pools across them, highlighting one face, then another, as clouds pass above. The glistening beards seem to catch the light deliberately, turning heads into small lanterns in the morning air. The men themselves remain motionless, as though they know movement would break the illusion. Occasionally one speaks. The words are simple. Remarks about the warmth of the sun, about the quality of figs at market, about a neighbor's mule that refuses to walk straight. The voices are low, calm, almost lazy. Their stillness speaks louder than their sentences. Each phrase is softened by the honeyed air around it, as if sweetness clings even to words. You notice that time itself slows near the benches. The market continues. Footsteps and laughter echo, bells toll faintly in the distance. But near these men the world seems reluctant to move. Perhaps it is the shine, perhaps the scent, perhaps the simple spectacle of men choosing to sit as though waiting for admiration. Whatever it is, the air thickens, and you find yourself breathing more slowly, caught in their rhythm. Florence accepts the display without comment. The barber folds his cloths, the servant stirs what remains in the jar, and pigeons circle above. The benches remain filled with statues that breathe, statues that shine, statues that wait, not for anything specific, but simply because waiting itself has become the point. You wake as the square loosens its shoulders and widens into market hour. Awnings bloom from poles and windows like cautious sails, casting pale rectangles of shade on the cobbles. The air finds new jobs to do. It carries fruit, cloth, and beeswax, brings them into a single polite conversation, and sets them down before you, as though expecting you to nod. You do. The city appreciates agreement that does not require speeches. You move with the early crowd, neither rushing nor dawdling, which is the only speed Florence respects. A man stacks figs in little pyramids that remember geometry for a minute and then forget. Their skins bloom with the faintest dust, a softness like sleep on fruit. Nearby, lemons shine as if the sun had appointed ambassadors. A woman presses a lemon's rind and releases a brief spark of scent, sharp enough to make the honey in the air sit up straighter. Grapes hang in shadow, their skins half glass, half night, and a boy counts them with his eyes as if arithmetic could feed him. Cloth sellers unroll their mornings in long, even strokes. Wool breathes out, homely and warm, Linen lies flatter, like water that learned to hold still. A bolt dyed with madder spills a quiet red. Another, brushed with woad, remembers sky. Fingers graze, pinch, test. The merchants speak with the patience of men who can repeat their truths forever. This one wears well. That one washes kindly. This one will not complain in winter. A woman lifts the edge of a length to her cheek, closes her eyes, and gives it the smallest nod. Deal done, without the theatre of bargaining, which will occur anyway because custom enjoys hearing itself. A chandler's table brightens the scene in a softer register. Bricks of beeswax stacked like buttery books, each block holding summer inside. A knife lifts a curl, it falls back with a small sigh. Wicks lie coiled like pale snakes beside a wooden mould. The chandler palms a block, presses a thumb to its edge, and inhales with professional devotion. Warm wax smells like clean work and quiet light. It also smells like what the men wear on their faces, the cousins sent to the honey glazing their chins. When a honeyed beard passes, the beeswax on the table behaves like a mirror, less reflective, more understanding. You pause at the apothecary's stall, where jars sit in tidy ranks behind glass, each with a label that promises usefulness delivered slowly. Dried rose petals doze in one jar, orange rinds coil in another, like commas waiting for their sentence. The vendor crushes a pinch of rosemary between his fingers and lifts it to your nose. The green edge cuts through sweetness without ending it. He suggests a small vial to be mixed with honey, just a drop. He says, just a drop, the way priests say just a prayer. You consider, because considering is as close as Florence gets to buying quickly. Weights clink on scales. Brass pans sway and settle with dignified fatigue. A merchant pinches off a bit of cheese, offers it across the counter with a look that says he will not be offended if you refuse, but he will be correct if you accept. You do accept. It is firm, with a salt that doesn't argue. Bread nearby has been set out in rounds, each crust scored with a mark that could be a baker's pride or a baker's habit. At this hour, they are the same thing. Honey cakes doze on a wooden board, their tops sticky and freckled with crushed nut. You watch a child stare at them as though at stars. His mother steers him away gently, which does nothing to correct his orbit. The voices of sellers rise and fall with the steadiness of tide. There is a bell somewhere small, hand-held, rung not for alarm but to remind the world that a certain fish is fresh enough to have opinions. The fishmonger's stall contributes its own straight talk to the perfume of the square, and the honeyed air, being accommodating, steps aside without entirely yielding. Life smells complicated and gets along anyway. Men with glazed beards pass like moving lanterns. Their scent trails behind them in short ribbons. Honey warmed on clay, rose that remembers a garden behind a convent wall, citrus that keeps one foot in the orchard and one in the street. Women notice as they weave between stalls, lifting lids, testing fruit, checking cloth. The glances are quick, respectful of the work at hand, but they exist. Honey is a minor actor that knows how to draw focus without stealing the scene. You drift to the edge of the candles again. The chandler pours from a warmed pot into the mould, the stream thick and obedient. He taps the side, a sound small as a fingernail on a door. Cooling wax takes a skin, then a body, then a purpose. He slides finished tapers from yesterday's mould and lays them in a row. Pale soldiers trained to stand and burn with equal politeness. A smear of wax glosses his thumb. He wipes it with a motion that says this thumb has been glossy for decades. Farther on, a spice seller lifts the lid from a chest and releases a breath busy with pepper and clove. It rides up through the honey, not to replace it, but to remind your nose that the world has corners. He folds a twist of paper with the care of a scribe, secures it with string, and sets it aside with a little nod to the universe. Nothing has hurried, everything has advanced. You pass fruits again, quinces with their fuzz like the memory of fur, pomegranates cracked to show rubies pretending to be seeds. A woman tears a fig and presses one half to her friend's palm. Together, they eat without looking at each other, which is the most civilized way to share. A man with a honeyed beard buys two, wipes his fingers on a cloth, and makes no attempt to stop the smile he has not admitted to. Above all, the awnings breathe. They lift in light breezes, fall back into shade, and send their shadows walking across faces, goods, and stone. The honeyed scent does the same. It appears, thins, returns, lingers in the lee of a pillar, tucks itself into the folds of a garment. It does not cling as much as it keeps company. Florence is a genius at companionships that require little talk. You stand a long while, letting the market pass through you. The sounds stack weights on scales, soft bargaining, cloth shuffling, the quiet slap of cut lemon against wood. The city builds itself for the day out of these pieces. Sweetness is one piece among many. It fits exactly, no more and no less than needed. You breathe, and even your breath slows to market rhythm. Patient, layered, matter-of-fact, faintly amused at its own persistence. When you turn to leave the square, you carry its arrangement with you. Fruit that looked back at the sun, cloth that remembered river and loom, wax that stored summer for winter, and a sweetness that has decided to stay where you are going. None of it asks you to hurry. All of it hopes you will return tomorrow and pretend to be surprised again. Florence approves. So do you. You wake as the sun shifts higher, and Florence has entered its steady rhythm. The square has softened into routine, stalls murmuring, sandals brushing stone, vendors speaking with voices that know how to rise and fall without tiring. You find yourself listening to fragments of talk, not conversations meant for you, but sentences that drift on the air and piece themselves together into meaning. Two men stand near the barber's bench, both with beards freshly coated in honey. Their chins shine in the light, catching brightness like polished fruit. They lean close, voices lowered just enough to sound important. One says that a glossy beard shows patience, that only a man who can sit through trimming, rinsing, combing, oiling, and honeying can truly be trusted. The other nods solemnly, as though this is wisdom to be written into stone. Neither seems to notice how their beards glisten while they pretend to speak of discipline. Nearby, a merchant selling figs chuckles under his breath. He whispers to his neighbor that honey is nothing more than a disguise, a sticky veil that hides laziness beneath shine. The neighbor shrugs, unwilling to argue, and continues arranging lemons into pyramids. They both keep glancing, though. Even disbelief has a nose. A group of younger men gather at the edge of the well, their voices less serious, their talk lighter. One boasts that his honey mixture holds the scent of orange peel stronger than anyone else's. Another insists that women smile more at rose water. A third laughs and claims no scent matters, only the shine. Their voices overlap, playful as sparrows, each trying to outdo the others while still keeping the game gentle. They stroke their beards theatrically, pretending to admire themselves in invisible mirrors. An older man passes by, his beard streaked with grey and glossed with honey so dark it almost looks black. He does not speak, but his pace is steady, his posture straight, and his scent lingers after him in a calm, persuasive way. The younger men fall briefly silent, watching him go before resuming their arguments in lower tones. It is clear that no amount of orange peel or rose water can quite match the dignity of age, softened by sweetness. You wander closer to another cluster of voices, where women discuss the same subject with sharper humour. One says she would rather smell bread dough on a man than honey. Another laughs and says bread does not shine in the sunlight the way honey does. The first retorts that at least bread does not drip onto collars. Their laughter blends with the rustling of cloth stalls, light and unbothered. They keep glancing, though, their eyes sliding toward the benches where men recline with beards glistening. Words can dismiss, but glances betray interest. The barber himself joins a conversation with a merchant leaning on a barrel. He explains, in patient tones, that honey is not only for beauty, but for discipline. To sit still while sticky sweetness is combed through hair is to prove steadiness. The merchant raises an eyebrow but does not argue. The barber smooths his apron, proud of his philosophy, and returns to his bench. Around you, the city seems to hum with this unspoken theme. Honey becomes more than taste or scent, it becomes a language. Each beard speaks its dialect, some sharper, some softer, some more practiced, some new and uncertain. Florence listens, nodding without ever saying it is listening. The talk is endless, circling back on itself, but never loud, never rushed. It is small talk stretched into a philosophy, as natural as breathing. A boy chases a dog across the square, both laughing in their own ways. They dart between honeyed men without apology, and no one objects. Life folds around them easily, because the square belongs to everyone, even those without beards or jars. The dog pauses, sneezes at a drifting drop, and continues running. The boy's laughter fades down an alley, replaced by the softer rhythm of sandals and spoons. You lean against a wall, the stone warm and forgiving. You listen to voices that never rise above calm, each sentence softened by the sweetness clinging to the air. They talk of honey as wealth, as seduction, as disguise, as patience. They talk of it as if it were coin, as if it were prayer, as if it were water. It is all of these and none of these. It is simply what men do in Florence, and so it matters. The square breathes slowly. Honey glistens. Talk drifts. You remain, absorbing it, knowing that words and sweetness will keep circling each other, as long as men dip their beards and women glance sideways. Florence has no reason to stop, neither do you. You wake to the hour when the sun begins leaning harder into the square, pushing shadows aside until they cling to walls and doorways. The warmth thickens. Stone holds it, cloth breathes it, honey reacts to it. What was smooth and obedient in the cooler air now grows restless. The men who treated their beards earlier find that shine becomes something different under stronger light. You notice how honey darkens when it meets heat. Beards that shimmered with a soft glow at dawn now glisten with a heavier weight. Drops form more quickly, swelling at the tips of hair. Some fall, small golden beads, and splatter on the stone where they flatten into sticky stains. They glimmer briefly before dust claims them. The cobbles keep these stains, marking the paths of men who carried sweetness into the square. Under the loggia, where the barber keeps his jars shaded, the honey remains calm, still spreadable, still willing to glide across combs. But out in the sunlight, on beards and collars, it shows its impatience. Men wipe more often now, pulling cloths from belts, pressing them to corners of mouths and chins. The cloths themselves shine faintly where drops smear into folds. You see one man tip his head back beneath an awning, hiding from the sun as though seeking refuge for his beard. Another pulls his collar forward, trying to keep honey from sinking into cloth. A third simply accepts it, sitting still while drops gather and fall, letting the stone beneath him hold the evidence. No one complains aloud. To speak against honey would be to speak against custom, and Florence has no patience for that. The shadows in the square lengthen sideways. They crawl over benches, stretch across stalls, and divide the light into sharp shapes. Honey stains catch in the shifting pattern, each drop glowing like an amber pebble trapped in stone. Children run through them, sandals slapping, unaware of their quiet importance. The stains do not mind. They have already joined the city's long memory of mourning. The air changes too. Sweetness grows heavier, mixed now with sweat, with bread baking, with leather curing in a nearby workshop. The honey still dominates, but it bends slightly under the weight of noon. A breeze stirs from the river, carrying a cooler scent of water and silt, and for a moment the honey softens, spreading thin across the air instead of gathering thickly. You breathe it in, grateful for the shift, though it lasts only as long as the breeze. Men sitting on the benches tilt their heads, watching shadows crawl. One jokes softly that the sun conspires against their seduction, melting it away drop by drop. Another replies that a true charm is worth a little stickiness. Their voices are low, calm, carrying no urgency. Even as honey stains collars and drips on sandals, the men sit as though it is all part of the design. At the corner of the square, an old woman bends to scrape hardened honey from the cobble with the edge of her shoe. She shakes her head but smiles faintly, muttering that Florence will be sweet long after its men have grown sour. Her words vanish into the hum of the market, absorbed by the city like every other sound. You stand still and watch as sunlight and honey wrestle quietly with one another. Shine becomes glimmer, glimmer becomes drip, drip becomes stain. The cycle repeats, as steady as the bells. You do not rush. You breathe slowly, letting the sense and sight settle into your chest. Florence does not mind that you linger. It prefers you to notice the details, even the sticky ones. You wake into the softer buzz of afternoon, when the square loosens its pace but does not fall silent. The honey is still present, thick in the air, clinging to collars, staining stones, but now it mingles with the slower habits of men drinking wine in shaded corners. You drift toward one of these corners, where a cluster of men have gathered, their beards glistening, their hands wrapped around earthen cups. The wine is dark, almost purple, and it shines faintly in the sun, like another kind of honey, thinner, quicker, more restless. Men lift the cups carefully, because drinking with a honeyed beard is no small task. Each sip requires calculation. Tilt too far, and the wine mingles with honey, creating a mess of sweetness and stain. Tilt too little, and the mouth receives nothing but disappointment. The men solve this problem with slow, deliberate movements, lips pressing against the rim as though testing a secret. One man wipes his chin with a cloth immediately after each sip, dabbing as though his face were a fragile page of a manuscript. Another chooses the opposite method. He drinks boldly, lets the mixture cling to his beard, and then licks it from his moustache with quiet satisfaction. His companions watch, some amused, some faintly disgusted, but none object. Florence tolerates many styles, provided the honey remains central. The scent of wine adds itself to the air, sharp and heavy, cutting through the sweetness without erasing it. Honey and wine together form a curious perfume, sticky, fermented, almost reckless. You breathe it in, feeling how it settles differently from morning's gentler mixture. The city adjusts, shifting its rhythm to accommodate. Men speak slowly, their words softened by the act of drinking. They discuss grain again, as they always do, because grain belongs to every conversation, whether invited or not. They discuss taxes, though none of them care to argue loudly about it. They return, inevitably, to their beards. One boasts that his mixture of honey and orange oil drew the longest glance from a woman passing earlier. Another insists that wine has made his beard glisten more brightly. They all nod, though none of them truly agree. At another table, two men laugh over their misfortune. One has spilled wine onto his beard, and now the honey runs in streaks of purple and gold. The other leans in, squints, and declares it fashionable, though his tone is far too amused to be serious. They laugh again, wiping without urgency. The cloth absorbs the stain but cannot remove it entirely. The man shrugs and drinks again, accepting that Florence itself will carry the memory of the accident on his chin. Women pass between the tables, baskets still heavy with purchases. They glance quickly at the drinkers, and the scent of honey mixed with wine lingers in their wake. Some wrinkle their noses faintly, others smile without meaning to. The men, pretending not to notice, stroke their beards more often, as though reminding the air of what clings there. The afternoon sun leans harder now, pressing heat into the square. Wine jars sweat faintly, their clay dampening in patches. The honey grows looser in the heat, threatening more drips. Cloths are busier now, folded and unfolded, pressed to mouths and chins, then folded again. The apprentice boy at the barber's bench shakes his head as he watches, as though amused that men work so hard to manage what they invited willingly. He returns to wiping jars and stirring honey, content to let them wrestle with their choices. You sit nearby, cup in hand, the taste of wine thick on your tongue. It carries a faint sweetness, though not as bold as the honey. When you wipe your mouth, the cloth comes away sticky anyway, as if the city itself insists that no drink should escape the theme of the day. You accept this without complaint. Complaints dry faster than honey, and no one listens to them. The men continue their slow ritual. Sip, dab, boast, chuckle. The square hums softly, bees drift lazily near the edges, and the air grows heavy with scent. Wine and honey do not fight each other. They lean together, sticky and sour, patient and indulgent, as though Florence itself has decided to drink alongside you. You wake into the softened hush of mid-afternoon, when the square begins to lean toward shade and errands slow their pace. The barber's bench is quieter now, but the scent of honey has not lifted. It clings to every fold of air, wrapping itself around baskets of fruit, bolts of cloth, even the doorways where shadows have gathered to rest. You follow the sound of whispers, lighter than conversation, coming from the silk merchant's shop. The shop is dimmer than the square, its awning stretched wide to shield the delicate goods within. Rolls of silk lie on the long table, their colours muted under shade but alive where the light touches them. Green that suggests leaves just after rain, blue that remembers the evening sky, red that glows like a coal under ash. The merchant speaks in a voice as smooth as the fabric, coaxing hands to touch, promising drape and sheen. Two women stand close, fingers brushing the silks, but their eyes are elsewhere. They dart toward the doorway, where men with honeyed beards lean against the frame. The men pretend to examine a bolt of crimson cloth, but stroke their beards as though silk itself might take lessons in gloss from them. The women cover their mouths, whispering into one another's shoulders. Their laughter escapes anyway, soft and sharp, like pins dropped onto fabric. You step further inside, and the scent changes. Honey lingers, of course, carried in from outside, but it mingles now with the faint must of fabric, with dyes that still breathe faintly of their vats, with the dust of wood that holds the shelves. The air feels heavier, but not unpleasant. It presses close, wrapping you in layers, just as silk would. The merchant clears his throat, trying to restore focus to his goods. He runs a length of gold-threaded fabric through his hands, letting it slip like liquid between his fingers. The sound is a whisper in itself, yet the women giggle again, stealing another glance at the shining beards. One tilts her head, muttering that honey smells better than dye, though her voice is too low for the men to claim. Her companion laughs and adds that silk wrinkles less than a man's chin, but she looks again anyway. The men do not speak. They know silence carries weight. They stroke their beards slowly, turning their faces so the light outside can reach them even in shadow. Honey glimmers faintly, holding its glow despite the dimness. The merchant sighs quietly, defeated for now, and folds the silk again with careful patience. Other shoppers wander in, drawn less by the fabrics than by the chance to step out of the heat. They pretend to browse, but their noses twitch. Honey follows the men everywhere, a companion that does not require invitation. A boy carrying a roll of cloth sneezes, and the women laugh again, not entirely at him. You rest your hand on a bolt of blue silk, cool beneath your palm. It does not smell of honey, but the fragrance hovers near enough that you cannot separate them. The city has braided them together, the gloss of fabric, the gloss of beard, both promising softness, both demanding touch. You do not need to touch. The promise itself is enough. When you step back outside, the light seems brighter after the shaded shop. The men remain at the doorway, still leaning, still gleaming, still silent. The women leave with their cloth wrapped neatly, their laughter still trembling in their throats. The merchant watches them go, shakes his head, and returns to his folding. Florence has decided what the afternoon will smell like, and the merchant cannot argue. You breathe slowly, letting the honey air slide into your lungs once more. It carries silk with it now, faint threads of dye, a whisper of fabric. The square accepts this new mixture easily, as though it had been waiting for it. Nothing startles. Everything folds itself together, honey, silk, laughter, shade. You wake into the stretch of afternoon when the sun softens its voice but still clings to rooftops, and Florence leans toward the river. The air shifts here, carrying with it the cool weight of water and the faint mineral scent of stone worn smooth by centuries of current. You follow the sound of footsteps that echo more loosely, leading you past the square and into the banks of the Arno. The river lies broad and patient, its surface broken only by the smallest ripples that catch the light like scales on a great fish. Along the edge, men gather in pairs, their honeyed beards catching the breeze. The scent, carried here from the square, mingles with the damp air, creating a mixture both sweet and fresh. Honey does not disappear, it learns how to adapt. Stone steps lead down to the water, worn shallow by countless feet. A group of boys splash at the edge, chasing one another, their laughter bouncing off the river's surface. They glance at the bearded men nearby, giggling louder, pointing at the shine dripping from chins into the water. One boy dares to mimic, cupping river water and smearing it across his face. His companions laugh until one of them slips, sending all of them tumbling. Their noise rises for a moment, then settles back into the steady hum of the river. The men sit quietly, chins tilted forward to catch the breeze. The honey on their beards grows looser in the damp air, beads forming and falling into the river below. Small circles ripple outward where the drops land, faint golden shadows sliding beneath the surface before vanishing. The river accepts them without protest, as if it has been collecting such offerings for years. Nearby, a fisherman mends his nets, the twine rough against his hands. He glances once at the honeyed men and shakes his head with mild amusement. To him, shine belongs to scales, not to beards. Yet even he smiles faintly when a breeze carries the sweetness close, softening the sharp smell of river mud and fish. A woman leans from a balcony above, her arms draped over the ledge, basket resting at her hip. She watches for a moment, her eyes lingering longer than she intended. When she notices her own gaze, she laughs softly at herself and turns away, though not before taking another breath of the air. Honey, even when mixed with river damp, does its quiet work. You sit on the stone steps, the coolness of the rock seeping into your skin. The river's voice is steady, a constant low murmur that never changes tone. The breeze plays across your face, bringing alternating waves of sweetness and dampness. One moment the scent of honey dominates, heavy and golden. The next, the smell of river stone and moss takes its place. The alternation soothes you, like inhaling through one dream and exhaling through another. A boat drifts slowly downstream, its oars dipping with unhurried rhythm. The boatman lifts his chin as he passes, catching sight of the glistening beards along the steps. He does not comment, but his smile widens, and he hums a tune as he rows. The tune joins the river's murmur, faint but persistent, until it fades around the bend. Bees are rare here, farther from flowers, yet one finds its way to the riverbank. It hovers uncertainly over a beard, buzzing low, then veers off to investigate a patch of moss. The man strokes his chin calmly, unfazed. Honey belongs to men now, at least for this hour, and the bee accepts its consolation prize in the greenery. You stay a long while by the river, watching drops fall, ripples spread, breezes stir. The honey that once felt heavy in the square feels lighter here, stretched across the air by water's patient hands. Florence has many ways of softening its sweetness, and today the river is its chosen partner. You wake to the deeper afternoon, when the city's heat presses hardest, and shade becomes a currency men measure carefully. The loggias and arcades along Florence's streets fill with bodies seeking refuge, and the square near the well grows quieter. The barber has set aside his combs for now. Even honey must rest. Instead, men drift toward the cool arches, reclining on benches, their beards still glistening faintly though dulled now by hours of sun and breeze. The loggia breathes a different air. Shadows pool against the walls, long and cool, while the faintest draughts slip through the columns. Men stretch out, eyes half shut, sandals kicked loosely against stone. Their hands rest on folded cloths that carry the faint memory of wiping honey drips. Bees wander lazily in and out of the shade, curious but not insistent. Their hum is soft, blending into the city's general murmur. Some men doze openly, heads tilted back, mouths slightly parted, chins lifted so their beards gleam faintly in the dim light. Honey holds its place, though it softens in sleep. A drop forms now and then at the corner of a chin, travelling slowly until gravity persuades it to fall. The stone beneath the benches gathers these offerings in tiny dark stains, small constellations marking each nap. Others remain awake, though unwilling to move much. They sit with elbows on knees, voices lowered to match the shade. Their words meander, the price of olives, the stubbornness of donkeys, the unreliability of apprentices. One man chuckles quietly that even honey seems to droop in such heat. Another replies that charm, like honey, requires patience to endure. They do not debate further. The loggia prefers murmurs, not arguments. The air smells thick here, honey still present, but mingled now with sweat, old stone, and the faint fragrance of herbs hung in doorways to dry. Lavender droops from one arch, sending a soft note into the shaded air. Rosemary, sharper, joins it from another corner. Together with honey, the scents weave a slow blanket that drapes across every man resting there. A cat slips into the shade, tail twitching, nose twitching too. It pauses at a bench leg, sniffs a honey drop, and decides against it. Curling itself nearby, it dozes alongside the men, one more body surrendering to the warm lull of the afternoon. Flies are braver, circling lazily, touching the edges of beards before being waved away with slow, drowsy hands. You sit on the cool stone ledge, the rough surface pressing through your tunic. Your own body softens under the stillness, as though the city itself were coaxing you into a nap. The hum of bees, the shuffle of sandals outside, the occasional sigh of a sleeping man, all of it forms a lullaby that does not announce itself as such. A boy wanders in with a jug of water, setting it carefully on the ground. He pours into a cup, passes it to one of the older men, then curls up in a corner with his own drink. He watches the honeyed beards with half curiosity, half amusement. Someday, perhaps, he will join the ritual. For now, he only observes, learning that even stillness can be an art. The loggia holds them all in its shade, patient and cool, a stone cave in the middle of brightness. Honey drips occasionally, bees wander, men breathe in rhythm with the air. Nothing interrupts the slow drift toward drowsiness. You too feel your eyes grow heavier, lulled by the sameness of breath and the thick sweetness that refuses to leave. You wake in the softened hour when afternoon begins to bend toward evening, though the heat has not yet released its grip. The loggia is still filled with drowsy bodies, but a gentle stirring begins. Men shift, stand, stretch their limbs, and smooth their tunic. Their hands find their beards automatically, testing the gloss that has dulled through sleep. Honey clings, but it no longer shines with the freshness of morning. It requires tending, as all customs do. The barber reappears, his apron folded neatly, his jars return to their bench. The coals of the brazier are coaxed awake again, stirred into a faint red glow. A small pot is set upon them, and the honey stirs once more, stretching itself in slow ribbons. The scent returns, stronger after being warmed, sliding through the shaded air like a familiar tune. Men rise from the benches, drawn back toward the ritual as naturally as moths toward a flame. The apprentice boy stands ready with fresh cloths, their folds stiff in places where honey has dried from the morning. He arranges them in a stack, then dips a comb into rose water, shaking droplets onto the stones before passing it to the barber. The comb glistens faintly in the slanted light. The barber chooses his first client, a man whose beard still carries a faint glow but whose edges have grown sticky. The reapplication begins carefully. Honey is thinner now in the warmth of day, more eager to drip. The barber coats the comb sparingly, then drags it through the beard with deliberate patience. The man closes his eyes, lifting his chin to catch both honey and breeze. Drops threaten, forming quickly at the tips, but the boy is swift with the cloth, catching each one before it can mark the stones. The rhythm is familiar. Dip, stroke, catch, fold. Other men line up, waiting their turn. Some stroke their beards with faint embarrassment at how the earlier gloss has dulled. Others watch calmly, knowing the ritual repeats as surely as bells. A woman passing nearby glances once, wrinkles her nose at the heavy sweetness in the air, then glances again without meaning to. The barber does not notice. His attention belongs to the comb, the honey, the beard. Rose water is added more freely now, drops sprinkled into the mixture to soften its grip. The scent floats through the loggia, gentler, mingling with the stronger sweetness. A small vial of orange oil follows, its sharpness cutting the air briefly before sinking into the blend. Each beard receives not only honey, but fragrance layered upon fragrance, building a perfume meant to last into the evening. The men wait in patient silence. Only the sounds of comb teeth dragging, honey dripping, cloth wiping, and bees humming fill the air. A bee lands briefly on the rim of a jar, wanders in circles, then lifts away. The apprentice watches with fascination, as though the bee is another client waiting its turn. One man rises from the chair, his beard shining again, edges softened by rosewater, tips catching the low light. He strokes it once, nods, and steps aside. Another takes his place without speaking. The process repeats, and the air grows thicker with scent until the loggia itself seems glazed. Honey does not rush. It spreads slowly, as though teaching patience to anyone who lingers near. The barber hums his simple tune once again, the same few notes rising and falling with the rhythm of the comb. The apprentice hums quietly with him, almost unconsciously. Together they keep the ritual alive, stroke by stroke, as the day prepares to lean toward lanterns and evening streets. You sit nearby, breathing in the layered air. Honey, rose, citrus, sweat, stone, all of it mingles without fighting. All of it drapes over you like a cloak. The reapplication continues, steady as the river, unhurried as the city itself. You know it will last until every beard gleams again, ready to step into night. You wake into the hour when Florence begins to trade sunlight for lanterns. The air cools slightly, though heat still lingers in the stones, rising in faint breaths against your sandals. The barber's work has ended for the day, the jars closed, the combs wiped and stacked. Yet the men remain, their beards freshly glossed, prepared for the long stretch of evening. Now the streets themselves become the stage. Lanterns hang from iron hooks along the cobbled lanes, their light catching on polished brass and shallow pools of water. The glow is soft, gold with a flicker, as though it wants to imitate honey but cannot manage the thickness. Men step into this light, and their beards respond with an answering gleam. Honey holds the flame the way glass holds sun, reflecting it outward in tiny, steady halos. The streets narrow, pressing close with walls that lean forward. Each lantern illuminates only a patch, so that light and shadow weave themselves together like cloth strips in a loom. Men move through them in clusters or alone, chins high, honey scent trailing in faint ribbons behind. The air is filled not only with fragrance, but with the echo of sandals, the soft brush of fabric, the distant murmur of merchants closing their stalls. You walk among them, noticing how the city itself seems to admire the display. Water trickling in gutters catches a beard's reflection for a moment before it is broken by ripples. Windows above open briefly, faces leaning out, breathing in air that carries honey mixed with smoke from cooking fires. The scent does not vanish, it changes shape, adapting to night. A group of men gather at a corner, speaking quietly, their beards catching the lantern glow. They gesture sparingly, more with their chins than with their hands, as though the honey itself deserves to punctuate their sentences. Women pass, arms looped together, eyes darting sideways. Some smile softly, some whisper and laugh. The men do not answer directly, but their shoulders straighten a fraction, and their beards tilt into the light more fully. The city hums with a quiet energy. A lute is strummed faintly in the distance, one tune slipping between doorways, another spilling from a courtyard. The music blends with the honeyed air, weaving sound into scent. It is not loud, not insistent. It is enough. Lanterns sway slightly in the breeze, casting shifting shadows across the cobbles. Honey glimmers in those shadows, refusing to be hidden. Even where light is scarce, a faint sheen remains, as though the beards have learned to store their own glow. You find yourself following these glimmers as though they were guiding lights, leading you deeper into Florence's night. The fragrance has grown calmer now, less sharp than in the day. The citrus has faded, the rose water has softened, but the honey persists, warm and low, like a hum beneath the city's noise. You breathe it in slowly, letting it settle. Evening accepts the sweetness without fuss, folding it into its rhythm of lanterns, sandals, and murmured talk. Florence, glossy and glowing, leans into night without haste. The men walk, the women glance, the lanterns burn, and you drift with them, part of a city that has decided even darkness should shine. You wake into the hour when voices soften and music begins to float between walls. The streets are calmer now, shadows stretching wide, lanterns steady in their hooks. You follow the sound of strings plucked gently, the slow rhythm of a lute. until you reach a courtyard lit by 2 torches and 1 moon overhead. Here, men lean in corners, their beards glimmering faintly with honey's patient shine. They are not loud. They are content to let fragrance and glimmer speak for them. A lute rests in one man's lap, his fingers moving with the kind of ease that comes only from years of playing for evenings exactly like this. The tune is simple 2 notes rising, 3 falling repeated enough times that it feels older than memory. Women pass through the courtyard's edge, arms linked, skirts brushing stone. They pause just long enough to let the music reach them. A laugh escapes one of them, quiet but sharp, carried upward to the stars. They linger a moment more, inhaling the air which carries honey mixed with wine and torch smoke. Then they move on, though their heads turn back once, unwilling to leave the glow entirely. The men say little. One hums softly with the lute. Another taps his sandal against the stone, not in rhythm exactly, but close enough to be counted as agreement. A third strokes his beard, spreading fragrance further into the air. The honey glimmers in the torchlight, catching fire in its gloss before settling back into darkness. You stand quietly at the courtyard's edge. The walls rise close, their plaster mottled with shadows. Potted plants lean against them, their leaves brushing one another in the light breeze. A jar of wine rests on the ground, its clay sweating from the cool night air. Cups are passed lazily, their rims shining faintly where firelight touches them. The scent here is layered differently than in the square. Honey still dominates, but it mixes now with roasted meat from a nearby kitchen, with herbs burned for smoke, with the faint metallic breath of iron hinges cooling. Together they form a perfume that is heavier but still calm, a fragrance that lingers in your mouth as well as your nose. A man lifts his cup, drinks slowly, then tilts his head toward the lute. No words are needed. The musician continues, letting notes fall like drops of honey themselves, slow and inevitable. The tune drapes across the courtyard, folding itself into beards, into torches, into the stones that have heard it countless times before. One woman returns briefly, pretending she has forgotten something at the edge of the courtyard. Her glance is quick, almost careless, but it catches on a beard glowing in torchlight. She smiles to herself, says nothing, and disappears again. The men do not call after her. They let the silence remain, knowing that silence holds more weight than any jest. The courtyard grows quieter still. Only the lute, the faint hum of bees long since gone to sleep, and the low fragrance of honey remain. You sit on a low step, breathing slowly, watching light dance along beards as though torch and honey have made a secret pact. Nothing asks for haste. Everything stretches, patient and slow, as evening ripens. You wake as the city leans further into evening, when courtyards glow and alleys deepen, and the market voices have thinned to murmurs. The square feels softer now, lit by scattered torches and the long glow of lantern. You drift toward a table laid with fruits figs opened to show their dark centers, pomegranates cracked with rubies spilling, apples gleaming in neat rows. The scent of sweetness rises, mixing with the steady perfume of honey carried by the men who linger here. They stand close, their beards still glistening, though the shine is subtler under torchlight than under the sun. Honey holds differently at night, less glare, more suggestion. Women pause at the fruit tables, fingers brushing figs, lifting apples, weighing them in palms. They laugh softly at something private, but their glances flick toward the men nearby, whose beards carry fragrance even stronger than the fruit. One woman picks up a fig, breaks it open with careful hands, and presses half into her friend's palm. The two eat without hurry, the juice sticky on their fingers. As they wipe them against cloths, their eyes slide again toward the honeyed chins. The men shift slightly, not closer, not farther, just enough to let the air carry the fragrance across the small space between them. A man takes an apple, bites carefully, and lowers it slowly. Honey glints on his beard where torchlight touches. He chews without haste, knowing the sight is enough. Another peels a fig in his fingers, pretending not to notice the women, though he lifts his chin more than necessary. The act is quiet, yet deliberate. The fruit becomes a companion to the honey, each sweetness amplifying the other. You notice how the scents mingle. Honey, thick and slow, wraps itself around the sharper perfume of figs, the sour sweet edge of pomegranate, the clean crispness of apple. Together they form an air that tastes almost edible, heavy with suggestion. The women smile faintly, pretending it is the fruit that pleases them. The men say nothing, knowing silence suits them better than boast. The torches crackle gently, sending smoke upward in loose threads. That smoke carries with it a hint of pine resin, faintly sharp against all the sweetness. It does not ruin the air, it steadies it. You breathe deeply, tasting both smoke and sugar, both fruit and honey, and you feel Florence balancing itself in your lung. A child tugs at his mother's sleeve, pointing at the dripping beards and whispering too loudly that they look like cakes. The mother hushes him, embarrassed, though a smile betrays her own agreement. The men do not frown. They accept the comparison with calm dignity, as though cakes themselves were secretly jealous. The fruit seller looks from women to men, from figs to beards, and shrugs to himself. His wares sell regardless of where the glances fall. He arranges the fruit again, neat rows broken and restored, and leaves the rest to honey and custom. You lean against a column, watching the scene unfold. Sweetness rests everywhere. In the air, on tongues, on beards, on fingers. No one hurries. The night allows sweetness to linger longer than the day, unbothered by drips or stains. You stay in the moment, letting fruit and honey blend on your breath, letting glances and laughter fold into the torchlight. Florence, in its quiet indulgence, seems content to let seduction smell like figs and shine like honey. You wake into the deeper evening when Florence prepares tables for supper. The square has quieted, though laughter drifts from doorways, and the air thickens with the mingled perfume of roasting meats, spiced sauces, and still-present honey. You follow the smell toward a long table set in the open, its surface crowded with platters and jugs, and surrounded by men whose beards shine faintly in the torchlight. The table stretches across the courtyard like a wooden river. Clay bowls hold stews, steam rising slowly into the night. Platters display roasted birds with skin crisp and glistening. Loaves of bread, round and cracked on top, sit in baskets lined with linen. Small dishes of olives, figs, and nuts are scattered among them, small interruptions in the larger landscape of food. Men sit along the benches, their beards honeyed still, though some shine brighter than others. The scent of honey mingles with roasted lamb, with garlic rubbed across bread, with the sharp tang of vinegar dressing salads. Sweetness does not retreat. It insists on joining every other fragrance at the table. When men lean forward to speak, the air grows thicker with it, drifting across bowls and plates. Wine fills clay cups again, darker now than earlier, its perfume heavy as night. Men lift their cups cautiously, remembering how honey clings to lips. Some sip carefully, dabbing with cloths afterward. Others drink boldly, letting wine streak through honey, leaving faint purple trails across chins. Laughter follows, low and steady, unbothered by the stains. Supper is forgiving. It accepts both neatness and mess. You notice the way food itself seems to echo honey. Roasted carrots, caramelized by fire, release their own sweetness. Apples baked with cinnamon melt into softness on wooden platters. Even onions, cooked until golden, mirror the slow gloss of honeyed beards. The table becomes a chorus, each dish a different note in the same key. The conversation is gentle, as if food and fragrance together demand calm. Men remark on the tenderness of meat, on the ripeness of figs, on the skill of the baker who scored the bread just so. Yet always the talk returns to beards. One man strokes his chin, declaring that honey has flavored his food better than salt. Another insists that bees themselves must envy him. A third laughs, saying his beard is sweeter than any dessert. Their voices ripple along the table like water disturbed by oars. Women pass nearby, carrying dishes from one doorway to another. They glance at the table, at the shining chins bent toward food, and smile faintly. One mutters to her companion that Florence has grown stickier than usual. Her companion replies that stickiness has never stopped anyone from leaning closer. They laugh together, then disappear into the shadows of kitchens. The air above the table is layered with scents. Smoke from the torches, meat roasted on spits, herbs crushed into sauce, and honey clinging to every breath. When the wind shifts, you catch them all at once, a tapestry of flavor and fragrance woven into the night. You breathe it in and feel it settle, patient and warm. Plates empty slowly. Cups are refilled, then drained again. The honey glows less brightly now, but still enough to catch torchlight, still enough to announce itself between mouthfuls. It lingers not only on chins, but on the very air, as if the table itself had dipped into the jar. You linger with them, letting supper's rhythm wash over you. Bite, sip, dab, laugh, repeat. The city eats with the same patience it grooms, never rushing, never loud. Even in feasting, Florence prefers calm indulgence, prefers sweetness that clings rather than demands. You wake as supper lengthens into a quieter hour, when torches burn lower and shadows lean across the table. The plates are mostly empty now, only crumbs and olive pits scattered along the boards. Wine jars sit half-drained, their rims sticky, their clay damp from spilled drops. Men linger, leaning back on benches, their bellies heavy, their beards still glistening faintly with honey that has outlasted the food. The talk shifts. It grows slower, less about the taste of lamb or the softness of bread, more about the men themselves. Honey becomes the subject again, but now spoken with the looseness of wine. One strokes his beard and claims it is the gloss of a nobleman, though he is no more than a cloth merchant. Another insists his honeyed chin gleamed so brightly that a woman across the table could not meet his eyes. Laughter follows, but it is gentle, not mocking. They speak of shine as though it were proof of vigor, proof of youth, proof of patience, all qualities men prefer to imagine they already possess. The brass mirror appears. It is passed hand to hand, its surface polished but never perfect, catching torchlight in streaks rather than clarity. Each man inspects his beard in turn, tilting his head, nodding at the glow. They boast yes, but in low voices, never loud. To speak too loudly would cheapen the gloss. Boasting must be as measured as the shine itself. One man dips his finger into his cup of wine and smooths it along the edge of his beard, declaring that the mix of grape and honey adds new charm. His companions chuckle, half approving, half amused. Another pulls a cloth from his belt, dabbing carefully at a corner where honey has thickened. He declares that patience is the truest seduction. If a beard can endure stickiness, so can a woman endure courtship. The table hums with approval, though mostly because no one wishes to argue. A younger man, emboldened by wine, brags that his beard drew a glance from the daughter of a wealthy merchant. He claims her eyes followed him like a shadow. An older man shakes his head slowly, lips curled into the faintest smile, and replies that glances mean little unless they linger. The younger one falls silent, though he strokes his beard more often afterward, perhaps hoping to encourage the memory to return. The air is thick with torch smoke and honey. Both cling to hair, to tunics, to the boards of the table. The smoke curls upward in slow spirals, while the honey clings downward, forming tiny globs at beard tips. Occasionally a drip lands on wood, where it shines faintly before dulling. None of the men wipe the table. Supper and boasting have already marked it. To clean it now would be to erase evidence of both. You sit back, watching their gestures. Hands trace along beards, fingers spread honey thin, voices low, eyes half-lidded from wine. It is not vanity in the sharp sense. It is a softer, heavier pride, the kind that drifts as slowly as the night itself. No one shouts, no one argues. The men boast in the same rhythm as they chewed their food earlier. Bite, sip, stroke, remark. It repeats without hurry, without end. The city around them seems to listen. A window above opens briefly, then shuts. A dog curls at the base of the loggia, nose twitching. A moth circles the torch, batting at the flame until it retreats again. Everything accepts the boasting as part of the evening, just as it accepts the honey, the wine, and the slow drift of time. You breathe it all in the heaviness of smoke, the sweetness of honey, the murmur of low pride, and feel it settle. Florence itself seems to boast, not loudly, but with the steady gleam of its stones under torchlight. The men's words fade into this rhythm, indistinguishable from the city's own quiet self-satisfaction. You wake deeper into the evening, when the torches burn lower, their smoke drifting in steady ribbons toward the night sky. The long table has grown quieter, but the ritual continues in its own way. A polished brass mirror, small enough to fit in a hand yet broad enough to capture a chin, is being passed slowly from man to man. It glows in the firelight like a slice of amber, catching glimmers of torch and beard together. Each man receives the mirror with a little ceremony. He tilts his head, raises his chin, studies the gloss that honey has left behind. The surface does not flatter, it is warped, pocked, uneven, but this does not matter. In its shimmer, they see enough shine to satisfy. One smooths his beard with fingers, leaving streaks of sweetness across the metal before passing it on. Another puckers his lips, admiring not his mouth, but the way honey glows around it. The barber himself joins for a moment, comb tucked into his belt, apron folded now that his work is finished. He accepts the mirror, runs it across his chin, and smiles faintly at his own handiwork. No one mocks him. He has tended their beards all day. He deserves his glance. The mirror moves on. The apprentice boy watches, carrying cloths damp from wiping drips. He peers at the mirror each time it passes, too young for a beard, yet eager for its promise. He stretches once as though to catch a reflection of his own face, but the men laugh gently, shaking their heads. His time will come. Honey waits for everyone eventually. The mirror grows stickier as it travels, honey smudges collecting in faint streaks across its surface. The reflections blur further, faces dissolving into soft shapes lit by torch glow. Yet the men do not mind. They wipe it once with a sleeve, then continue, as though clarity is less important than ritual. Each man must see himself once, even if only in outline. Words accompany the passing, murmurs of satisfaction, quiet boasts, soft laughter. One man declares his beard shines brighter than the torches. Another says the honey has disguised his grey hair entirely. A third insists the scent has already drawn admiring glances, though no one presses him for proof. The mirror nods in silence, agreeing with all of them, contradicting none. Women pass at the edges of the square, carrying baskets now lighter, their errands finished. They pause briefly, curious about the mirror. One tilts her head, smiling at the sight of men admiring themselves like boys with new toys. She mutters something to her companion, who laughs. Yet they too look a little longer than necessary before moving on. Honey, mirror, and torchlight together make their own spectacle. The torches crackle and hiss. Wax drips onto the stones, mingling with honey stains already hardened from the afternoon. The air is thick with both scents, smoke curling into sweetness until the two are indistinguishable. You breathe it in, letting the heaviness slow your breath, letting the rhythm of the evening settle into your bones. The mirror continues its slow circuit, each man tilting it just so, catching his own gleam, adjusting his beard with careful fingers, then handing it to the next. Nothing dramatic happens. Nothing changes. Yet the ritual itself is enough. A city that grooms in honey must also admire in honey. Reflection, like sweetness, is a duty. You sit nearby, watching brass, beard, and torchlight circle together, patient as the river. The mirror grows dimmer with smears, but the men see enough to be satisfied. Florence itself seems to nod, approving of a custom that turns even boasting into something calm. You wake into the stillness that follows the meal and the boasting, when Florence settles into narrow lanes washed with moonlight. The noise of the market has hushed, the laughter of courtyards has softened, and the sound of sandals on stone now comes in slow, spaced intervals. You step into the street, its cobbles pale under lanterns, its corners dark as folded cloth. The honey remains, though changed by night. It does not shout now. It lingers, clinging to the air like a memory. Men walk in pairs or alone, their beards catching what light remains. In torch glow or under the moon, the gloss appears less golden and more silvered, softened by the hour. Each step leaves a faint wake of fragrance, carried in thin threads behind them. The streets themselves are narrow, walls leaning close on either side, their plaster worn smooth by years of weather. Wooden shutters creak faintly as they close for the night. From open windows, the smell of cooling bread drifts down, mingling with the honey scent until the two seem indistinguishable. You breathe it in, the sweetness of sleep and of seduction folded together. A group of men turn into a lane ahead, their voices low. They speak in tones too soft to catch, yet their beards gleam faintly as they pass beneath a lantern. The honey reflects the light, momentary halos moving down the street. Women lean from windows above, some resting their chins on folded arms, others pretending to adjust laundry lines. Their eyes follow the shine without shame. They draw in the air, savoring its perfume, before leaning back inside. The stones underfoot bear marks of the day. Dark patches where honey has dripped and dried glisten faintly under the lanterns. Some are old, hardened, no longer sticky. Others are fresh, still holding a faint gleam. A dog sniffs at one spot, licks once, and trots on, unimpressed. The city carries these stains without complaint, each one a quiet record of vanity. You follow the men farther, their pace unhurried. Occasionally they stop to adjust a collar, to stroke a beard, to murmur in low tones. Their movements are small, deliberate, unhurried. The night itself seems to adopt their rhythm. Even the moon, half hidden behind drifting clouds, moves slowly, spreading silver light across the roofs. The air is layered here, honey foremost, then the faint salt of sweat, the cooling stone, the lingering smoke of torches extinguished. Together, the scents create a quiet perfume that belongs only to this hour. You inhale it, long and steady, letting it coat the inside of your lungs. No one rushes, no one raises a voice. The city holds its breath, listening to the soft pad of sandals, the faint drip of honey, the occasional laughter of men too pleased with their own glow to remain entirely silent. The narrow lanes accept all of it, the echoes folding back into the walls. You walk with them, step for step, and Florence itself feels honeyed now, every corner, every stone, every shadow, carrying the residue of sweetness. The night deepens, the air cools, but the fragrance persists. It does not fade, it drifts. You wake as the city grows quieter still, when only a few scattered voices move across the narrow street. The moon hangs pale and steady, silvering roof tiles, silvering the Arno, silvering even the honey-glossed chins of men who linger in the night. Yet the source of all this sweetness lies beyond these walls, out in the hills where the bees themselves sleep. You imagine the hives resting under olive trees, wooden boxes and woven skeps lined in rows, their entrances dark and silent. Inside, thousands of bees cluster in patient knots, wings folded, bodies pressed together in warmth. They dream their own dream of flowers, of clover and rosemary, of orchards buzzing with light. The hum of day has ceased, replaced by a slow, steady silence. The men in Florence rarely think of these hives when they dip combs into jars, yet the bees remain the unseen partners in every glistening chin. Their work gathers all seasons, spring blossoms, summer herbs, autumn fruits. They condense the air itself into sweetness, store it in combs, and then surrender it to jars. The city only finishes what the bees have begun. You picture them now, the queen deep inside, the workers curled around her, the hive breathing slowly, like one great chest. Their waxy walls smell faintly of resin, of pollen, of smoke from the last time the beekeeper coaxed honey away with careful hands. It is a perfume no less complex than the mixtures at the barber's bench, though humbler, quieter. The air in Florence still carries honey tonight, though muted by distance. When a breeze drifts through the streets, you can almost sense the faint echo of the hives beyond the walls. The fragrance in the city is heavy, mingled with wine and smoke, but outside, among the hives, it is lighter, cooler, more direct. Both belong to the same sweetness, two halves of one quiet labor. Men stroll past, their beards catching moonlight, unaware of the bees' dreaming silence. They adjust collars, they murmur to one another. They carry on the ritual as though it begins and ends here in stone streets. but you know it reaches farther to the dark hills, to the silent skeps, to the fields asleep under stars. The city's seduction is only the surface. The bees provide the foundation. You breathe more slowly now, letting the air thicken in your chest. Honey lingers, yes, but so does imagination of wax and wings, of the hum that will return when morning breaks. Even in stillness, Florence feels tethered to the countryside beyond. Every gleam on a beard tonight is a fragment of a hive at rest. The city sleeps on its stones, the bees sleep in their combs, and the fragrance drifts between them like a thread of silk connecting two worlds. You stand in the middle, inhaling both. You wake inside a chamber where lanterns burn low and shutters are drawn against the night. The streets outside have fallen nearly silent, yet the fragrance of honey has followed men indoors. It clings to them as they enter, carried in their beards, carried in their collars, carried in the folds of cloth, laid carelessly on stools. The room breathes with it now, a sweetness more intimate than the square, heavier than the breeze from the river. The bedclothes absorb it first. Linen, once smelling faintly of lye and air, now holds the stickier perfume of honey rubbed into chins. When men lean down, when they rest their heads against pillows, the scent transfers gently, leaving invisible stains across fabric. Sheets hold onto it, pillows keep it, blankets fold it into their threads. Even when the men rise again in morning, the fragrance will linger, stubborn as a guest refusing to leave. You notice how the room's air changes. Honey, once bold in sunlight and sharp in torchlight, becomes subdued within walls. It hangs heavier, slower, mixing with the faint smoke of the lantern, with the smell of wood rubbed by many hands, with the sharper tang of iron hinges cooling. It is not unpleasant. It is simply thicker, as though it has grown tired with the men themselves. A man lies back on his bed, head tilted, beard brushing against linen. Honey leaves faint traces there, small patches that glimmer only when the lantern catches them. Another pulls a blanket up, the fabric brushing his chin, carrying scent into its folds. A third sighs and rolls onto his side, unaware that he has left a small sticky mark on the pillow beneath him. No one minds. Linen can be washed, and in Florence fragrance is considered wealth, not burden. You sit quietly in the corner, watching as stillness overtakes them. The room hums with small sounds, the creak of a mattress, the faint rustle of cloth, the slow exhale of men already half asleep. Honey lingers on their breath as well, faint but perceptible, like the aftertaste of a dream. Women who enter later to tidy will notice it. They will shake their heads softly, perhaps laugh, perhaps wrinkle their noses, but they will not erase it entirely. Honey is persistent. It lives in fabric as much as it does in jars, and once it has chosen a place, it stays. You breathe deeply, and the room itself seems coated in gloss. Shadows move across walls, lantern flames sputter faintly, and all of it is wrapped in sweetness. Sleep waits in the corners, slow and patient, drawing itself closer. The city outside is silent now, but within these rooms, honey continues its work, settling into linens and into dream. You wake into the heavy stillness of night, where the streets outside are hushed, and the only sounds within are the creaks of wood and the sighs of sleep. The air of the chamber holds a layered perfume, the faint smoke of lanterns now extinguished, the dryness of old plaster, and above all, the slow, persistent sweetness of honey. It hangs in the darkness like a presence that does not need light to announce itself. The men breathe evenly in their beds, their chins brushing against linen, their beards pressing faintly into pillows. Honey mingles with the warmth of skin, softening, seeping, leaving invisible traces that will outlast the night. Dreams take it in, though the dreamers may not know, and carry it deeper, turning fragrance into imagery, stickiness into sensation. You imagine the shape of those dreams. A man walks through a field of clover, bees humming faintly but never stinging. Another finds himself in a hall lined with mirrors, each reflection showing his beard shining brighter than the last. A third sits in silence beside a woman who leans closer, drawn not by words but by the faint perfume clinging to him. None of the dreams are loud, none require voices. They are quiet, sticky, slow. The chamber itself seems to dream with them. Bedclothes, dampened faintly by sweat and sweetened by honey, fold into shapes that will carry the scent into morning. Wooden furniture holds it too, the edges of chairs and the beams of the ceiling absorbing sweetness through the air. Even the cool plaster walls seem touched by it, as though Florence has decided that no surface should escape this ritual. A drop of honey, warmed by the body beneath it, loosens and falls from beard to sheet. It lands without sound, but leaves a mark that glimmers faintly in the moonlight slipping through shutters. The stain is small, yet it feels permanent. In years to come, linen will be washed, yet the memory of this night will cling stubbornly. Bees themselves sleep beyond the walls, their hives quiet, their work stored neatly in combs. Yet, even in their absence, their labor continues in this room, in these dreams, in the scent that lingers. The men may forget them, but the bees remain present in every breath taken here. You lie still, letting the air coat you. It is thicker than before, almost tangible, as though you could gather it in your hands. The sweetness drifts through your own thoughts, dulling edges, smoothing corners. You feel yourself sinking with it, slower, softer, stickier, as though honey itself were drawing you towards sleep. Florence outside is silent. Florence inside hums with dreams that taste of sugar. Honey has entered not only beards and cloth, but the night itself. You wake to the faint clang of early bells, their tones softer than at dawn, as though the city is testing its own voice before committing to the new day. The chamber is dim, shutters still closed, but a cool line of light slips through one crack, cutting across the floor. The men stir slowly, hands brushing their beards instinctively, testing what honey has survived the night. The scent is still there, less bright, less sharp, but present. Honey clings stubbornly, even after sleep. Bedclothes carry it now as much as beards, and the air in the room holds a fainter echo of last evening's perfume. Pillows have darkened patches where sweetness pressed into them. Linen sheets smell not only of lye and soap, but of slow, warm sugar. One man rises, groaning softly, and pours water into a basin. He splashes his face, then leans forward, cupping handfuls of water into his beard. Droplets run down, catching traces of honey and carrying them into the basin. Another man does the same, rubbing at his chin until stickiness loosens. Their gestures are not hurried, they are careful, almost reverent. The barber's bench waits outside. Already the apprentice has stirred the brazier back into life, coaxing the first flickers of flame. A pot rests upon it once more, honey inside beginning to soften. The rhythm is familiar. Morning begins not only with bread and bells, but with the same ritual that marked yesterday and will mark tomorrow again. Men step into the square, blinking in the pale light. Their beards are damp, their collars loose, their hands holding folded cloths. They seat themselves on benches or lean against the well, waiting. The barber arrives, apron tied, combs laid out in order. Without ceremony, the first man sits, and the process begins again. Comb through damp hair, trim stray edges, dip spoon into jar, coat comb, spread honey. The air shifts back into its familiar sweetness, though lighter than at evening. Rosewater and orange peel are uncorked again, droplets added with care. The fragrance blooms, settling into the square the way sunlight settles onto roofs. Bees stir somewhere far beyond the walls, though none appear yet. Their presence is implied in every glimmer. Women pass on their way to market, glancing sidelong at the men already glistening anew. Some smile faintly, others roll their eyes, but all of them notice. The city expects this now, the daily gloss, the patient ritual. To walk through Florence in the morning is to breathe honey, whether one wishes to or not. You sit quietly, watching repetition turn into comfort. Bells continue their slow peals, sandals echo against cobbles, honey drips into cloths. Nothing has changed, yet everything feels restored. The men, refreshed from sleep, prepare themselves again for glances, for murmurs, for another day of sweetness. Florence begins again, glazed as surely as the bread cooling on wooden trays. You inhale deeply, recognizing the cycle, knowing it will not break. You wake as the square begins to busy itself once more, though now the stones bear proof of what has passed before. The cobbles are not clean, they never are. They carry lines, scratches, stains, and among these, the faint hardened traces of honey. Some shine faintly in the slant of morning light, like little coins scattered and forgotten. Others have dulled into dark patches, rough beneath sandals, ignored by everyone yet stubborn in their persistence. Men step carefully, though not to avoid them. Honey stains are part of the pavement now, as natural as moss in the cracks or soot on the walls. A mule passes, hooves striking against one patch, scraping it, loosening a flake that drifts like amber dust. A boy bends down, touches a hardened drop, then licks his finger curiously. His mother pulls him upright, scolds him in a whisper, and hurries him along. The boy laughs anyway, his lips shining faintly as though he too has joined the custom. You notice how the stains tell their own story. A cluster beneath the barber's bench marks where men waited, drips falling in patient sequence. Another trail curves toward the river, faint beads leading to the steps where men reclined yesterday. Even near the loggia, the stone beneath the benches bears its constellations of sticky residue. Florence itself records the ritual, not in writing, but in sugar hardened into stone. The smell lingers faintly too, especially when the sun warms the pavement. It rises in thin threads, barely noticeable, yet enough that the air tastes sweeter than it should. Bees will discover it soon, circling low, investigating, though they will find only memory left in the hardened drops. Men passing notice little. They stroke their freshly treated beards, gleaming again with honey, and do not look down. Their chins shine in the light, while their feet leave prints across patches of yesterday's sweetness. The city tolerates this contradiction. Honey belongs on beards, yet it also belongs on stones. A washerwoman kneels at the edge of the square, scrubbing at one stubborn stain with a rag dipped in water. She mutters as she works, shaking her head, though her expression softens into amusement when the patch refuses to lift. She shrugs, pours the rest of the water across the stone, and leaves it glistening instead of clean. Florence does not erase, it layers. You stand still, letting your eyes follow the lines of honey hardened in cracks, mapping the paths men have walked, the benches where they have rested, the spots where they have lingered too long. It is a quiet map of vanity, drawn without intention yet permanent all the same. When a breeze passes, it stirs the air above the stains, lifting the faint sweetness once more. You breathe it in slowly, knowing it is older than the drops themselves, older than the ritual, older even than the stones. Florence remembers by holding on, and the honey ensures it has something to hold. You wake in the slow curve of morning sliding into midday, when the rituals no longer feel like single acts but like habits, so ingrained they could be mistaken for breathing. The barber's bench is busy again, though not hurried. Men sit, stand, wait, dip, comb, wipe. It happens not as an event, but as repetition, an echo of every morning before, an echo of every morning still to come. The jars of honey are no longer remarkable. They are simply present. They rest on the bench like tools too ordinary to admire. Yet each man who sits in the chair treats them with reverence, leaning forward, closing his eyes, lifting his chin as the comb draws sweetness once more through his beard. Drips fall, cloths catch them, the apprentice folds them away. Nothing is new, but nothing feels old either. You notice how the men have stopped speaking much about the honey itself. They no longer boast loudly, no longer debate rosewater against orange peel. They sit in silence, content to let the shine exist. Their pride has softened into something quieter, something assumed. A honeyed beard no longer surprises anyone. It is as ordinary as bread at supper or bells at dawn. Women pass by with baskets, and their glances are no longer furtive. They look openly, as though glistening chins have become part of the scenery, like pigeons on roof tiles or laundry hung from windows. Their laughter is softer now, not mocking, not astonished, but familiar. Honey has ceased to be novelty. It has become background, woven into the city's daily tapestry. The air itself has grown accustomed. It no longer shifts when honey enters it. It already smells of it, permanently, endlessly. The sweetness mingles with leather, with dust, with fruit, with smoke, and none of these scents push it aside. Florence has absorbed it, and now it belongs as much to the stones as to the men. You stand at the well, watching drips fall as they always do. The stains on the cobbles overlap old ones, layering themselves into darker patches. Children no longer point at them. They step over them without thought. Dogs sniff them less often. The stains are simply part of the street now, part of its grain and colour. The barber works steadily, humming the same simple tune. His hands repeat motions without hesitation. Comb through, dip, stroke, wipe. His apprentice mirrors him, learning not by words but by rhythm. The men waiting do not fidget. They have all the time they need. The ritual requires no urgency, no innovation. It only requires patience. You breathe in the air, and the honey no longer feels like fragrance. It feels like climate, like atmosphere. It is not something added. It is simply what Florence smells like. You exhale slowly, letting the weight of it rest in your chest. The city carries on, but without remark. Honey on beards is no longer an act of seduction or pride or novelty. It has become custom, as expected, and unremarkable as church bells. The sweetness is ordinary now, yet no less present. You wake into the long stretch of day when time itself seems to pause, the sun hanging heavy above Florence, shadows pressed thin against the stones. The city moves, but it does so slowly, as though it too has dipped its beard in honey and grown deliberate, patient, sticky with routine. You stand once more in the familiar square, the well at its heart, the barber's bench settled like a piece of furniture the world would never dare move. Everything is as it has always been, yet heavier, slower, wrapped in a gloss that has become indistinguishable from the city itself. The men arrive again, as they have every morning, and as they will tomorrow. They do not question it, nor do they marvel. The honey is no longer novelty, it is necessity. They sit in the barber's chair, eyes closed, chins lifted, surrendering themselves to the ritual. The barber does not need to speak. His hands, steady and practiced, dip combs into jars, coat the teeth with warm honey, and drag them through beards with the patience of a priest tracing scripture. The air thickens once more, though now it feels less like perfume and more like atmosphere. Florence has decided this is what air should be. The apprentice boy, older now by mere days but already marked by habit, folds cloth after cloth. Each drip, each bead, each sticky trail finds its way into linen, and the boy's hands grow glossed as well. He wipes them on his tunic when no one is watching, leaving faint amber streaks that will harden into memory. He hums softly, mimicking the barber's tune, the same 2 notes rising, the same 3 notes falling, until the sound itself feels like honey stretched into music. Women pass, as they always do. Their glances are quicker now, less curious, less surprised. They smile faintly, sometimes amused, sometimes indulgent, sometimes simply accepting. They comment less, because what was once spectacle has become custom. Honeyed beards are no longer unusual, they are Florence itself, as much a part of the city as arches, bells, and the river's endless voice. The cobbles beneath your feet tell the same story. The stains of honey dripped and dried overlap until they are no longer distinct drops but patches of darkened stone. They catch the light differently, tiny constellations scattered under sandals and hooves. Children no longer bend to taste them. Dogs no longer sniff with curiosity. Even the bees, once occasional visitors, have stopped circling. The city itself has swallowed the sweetness into its body, into its breath, into its stones. You linger by the well, watching the men come and go. Their beards shine freshly at first, glimmering in sunlight, scents trailing like invisible banners. Then, as hours stretch, the shine dulls, drops form, cloths wipe, and the cycle repeats. No one hurries, no one protests. The ritual is not about change, but about repetition. To dip a beard in honey is not to seduce, not to boast, not to surprise, it is to belong. The river beyond the walls hums with its endless current, carrying faint traces of honey dropped by men leaning over its steps the day before. The water accepts, carries, and forgets, as rivers always do. Yet even it seems slower now, as though Florence's atmosphere has reached its banks, thickening the air above the water. Fishermen mend nets, unbothered by the faint fragrance drifting from city to stream. Birds wheel overhead, their wings stirring breezes that lift the scent, only to drop it again, gently, on the far shore. The barber wipes his hands on a cloth, his fingers permanently glossed despite his care. He does not pause. Another man sits, another beard waits. Honey pours, comb strokes, cloth dabs, tune hums. The rhythm is steady, unchanging, infinite. You realize the ritual could continue long after the men themselves are gone. As long as jars are filled, as long as combs are carved, as long as cloths can be folded, Florence will shine. The city has absorbed it fully now. Honey drips not only from beards, but from voices, from stones, from the very light. You walk through the streets and every corner smells faintly sweet. Bakers' ovens breathe sugar into bread. Merchants' scales, sticky from coins handled after jars, weigh fruit that already carries faint gloss. Even the doorways, even the laundry lines, even the shutters smell faintly of the ritual repeated every day. You pass a group of men sitting under an awning, their beards shimmering softly in the low sun. They do not speak, they do not boast, they do not need to. Their chins catch the light, and the air carries their presence. That is enough. A woman nearby adjusts her basket, glances, and then returns to her task. That too is enough. The city itself completes the conversation, filling the silence with acknowledgement. The hours stretch. Afternoon leans toward evening. Lanterns are lit once more, their glow reflecting in the gloss of beards until honey and flames seem made for one another. Supper tables fill, wine is poured, and the air thickens again, heavier now with food and smoke, but never without sweetness. Men dab at their mouths with cloths, wipe their chins, laugh quietly at the persistence of drips, and accept that Florence is a city that insists on stickiness. Night falls, and the honey does not vanish. It follows men indoors, clings to bedclothes, stains linen, seeps into dreams. Women sigh as they change sheets. Children laugh at the faint glitter left behind, yet no one truly wishes it gone. It has become the fragrance of home, of evening, of belonging. And so the cycle repeats. Morning will come again, jars will be warmed, combs will be dipped, cloths will be folded, honey will drip, stain, harden, and sweeten the air anew. It will coat stones, catch in collars, linger on lips. Florence will continue to breathe it, live it, wear it. You stand in the middle of it all, inhaling deeply, feeling the air coat your chest as though your own lungs have been glossed. Time itself feels honeyed slow, sticky, unwilling to rush forward. The city does not hurry, the men do not hurry. Even the bees, somewhere beyond the walls, hum at their own pace. Florence is dipped in honey, and you are too. You close your eyes, breathing slowly, letting the sweetness fold itself around you until the sound of combs, the hum of bees, the sigh of the river, and the glow of lanterns all blur together. Nothing demands, nothing changes. Everything simply glistens, endlessly, patiently, as if the world itself has been dipped and combed into order. The night has deepened fully now, and Florence lies quiet beneath its rooftops. The lanterns burn lower, their flames soft, their smoke faint. The cobbles are darker, carrying the memory of footsteps, carrying the memory of drips that have hardened into silence. The air is heavy, but not oppressive. It is slow, patient, carrying the last traces of honey mingled with wood smoke, with cooling stone, with the river's distant breath. You rest in that stillness, no longer moving through the square, no longer watching the barber's careful hands or the men's deliberate chins. Instead, you simply breathe. The sweetness has woven itself into every part of the city. It has become the air, the stone, the fabric, the night itself. There is no need to seek it. It is already here, surrounding you, folding you into its weight. The rhythm of the day lingers, comb, dip, stroke, wipe. It repeats inside your thoughts, not as action, but as quiet memory. The sound of scissors, the scrape of combs, the hum of voices, all of it grows softer, slower, as though distance itself has glazed it in honey. You listen, and the sounds become fainter still, until they are no more than whispers settling into your chest. Your body grows heavier, like cloth pressed flat, like wax cooling into stillness. The city around you breathes at the same pace, steady and even. Florence does not rush, and neither do you. You drift in its rhythm, its sweetness, its patience. You let it carry you, the way honey carries fragrance, the way stone carries stains, the way dreams carry air. Everything glistens faintly, even in the dark. Everything waits quietly, even as it sleeps. You close your eyes, and the world closes with you. We hope this glimpse into old customs has been a calm and pleasant one. If it made you curious for more, you can like, share, or leave a kind comment. And if you wish, subscribe to be here for the next unhurried tradition we explore together. End of script. Sweet dreams.